And now's the time for students to really think about getting that application started. Probably sometime after Labor Day, getting it submitted, and then having it reviewed by the colleges they apply to. It's such that their high school career is pretty well set, I mean, in terms of their academics as it pertains to college admission. If you think about it, their freshman, sophomore, junior year in high school is over. They're applying as a senior, so the review of their high school transcripts will be done based on the first 3 years of high school, and hopefully then those grades are strong enough that students will be admitted sometime probably in late fall, early winter. up your retirement and have you off 2 months in the summer, and
Yeah, and even being off is not, that wasn't that was fine. Because it's like a wash anyway because of all the hours you work during the
Yeah.
week. But when you take the salary that he told me that they, would put me at, and doing my state teacher's retirement, Dirk, you're talking $12,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's $1,000 a month.
yeah.
That's significant.
Yeah. No, I can't fault you for that at all. Wow.
Well, and she made it sound like they weren't going to, and I said, this is not about a counter offer. I told her, I'm not doing that. I said,
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, you asked me why I would even consider it. That's why I would consider it. Because she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be here. She goes, well, then be here. I said, well, there's other factors involved.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think we're good now.
No, note to self, not that I am going anywhere, but
Well, our relationship is a different dynamic. And
you've made her look good.
we have talked, we've had so many conversations about things, inside baseball, outside
Yeah.
baseball. And I've always been respectful, but if she asks, I'm going to tell her. And we've gotten to that point where we have those conversations. But yesterday didn't go as well as I thought that.
Well, she applied for, state superintendency. So it's not like, she's not out doing somewhat the same thing. 4:30 email that came out on a Friday afternoon about.
Yeah, she said she wishes she'd taken my advice because I told her to do that way before that.
What's the latest? Is she still of interest? Because they're not obviously hiring
There are
anybody.
people who are calling her, poking and prodding about it, but she.
But the people who are decision makers, are they the ones calling, or just people in the county who are saying, "Oh, you'd be good for that"?
Legislators.
Okay.
People around the state, but she's made it clear that they would have to forget all the process and just go, okay, you're it. And give her a 2 or 3 year deal. And
Yeah, it's hard to do though in the
Yeah.
political climate. Is she a Republican? Okay. Yeah, if she was a Democrat, I think that's what got Tom.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, he wasn't the right party.
It's true.
I know it is. That's the way it works.
Well, I know Nan Whaley said if she ends up governor, that Shannon's it. Period.
Yeah, Nan's probably, I don't know how, if she can get 30% of the vote, well, I'd be impressed.
It's a tough hill to climb in this state.
Well, he's bringing Intel in, and now today the latest announcement is Honda's going to be building their battery factory here in Ohio, and so now you've got two huge, multi-billion-dollar companies coming to Ohio. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right.
Here we go.
Do it. I'm just making sure this is working.
Is it working? Test 1, 2, 3.
No, your sound is
Okay.
fine. It's making sure that card is okay. It's almost a brand new one. So, boy, that was weird. I shouldn't say that. That's the second time I've had it happen, but not in the last 2 years. Okay. Robert, let's talk about. We're at the beginning of the school year. We're almost into September. If they haven't started that process, talking about parents and students, they need to, now is the time.
Yeah, now's the time for students to really think about getting that application started, probably sometime after Labor Day, getting it submitted, and then having it reviewed by the colleges they apply to. It's such that their high school career is pretty well set, in terms of their academics as it pertains to college admission. If you think about it, their freshman, sophomore, junior year in high school is over. They're applying as a senior, so the review of their high school transcripts will be done based on first 3 years of high school, and hopefully then those grades are strong enough that students will be admitted sometime probably in late fall, early winter.
To kind of give them a start, because it can be daunting. I mean, when you sit back and think about it, this is a huge decision, a huge choice. It seems like, you know, the task is huge. What are a couple of things that they can do right now to get started?
Sure. Well, hopefully they've done a little bit of homework, thinking about their career goals, what they might want to be doing in the way of a career. Is college the route in which to approach that career goal in which they have? And if so, there's a good chance that they probably have had maybe, 5 to 10 different colleges and universities in mind to help achieve that goal. But if they haven't, now's the time to start narrowing it down to those 4 or 5 schools that they think might be the school for them. Doing a campus visit, going out and actually seeing the campus. Do I fit in here? Is this such that I can see myself sitting here in class and enjoying my time at this institution? I think they also want to look at the financial picture of it as well. I think sometimes that gets overlooked until the last minute, and all of a sudden students have their hopes and dreams dashed because financially it's just not going to work out. So I think if they can get to a campus, have a visit, talk with admissions representatives, talk to financial aid representatives, again for those 4 or 5 schools that they think they have interest in, then that's where they should be at this point in time.
Let's talk about the 4 or 5 schools that they pick. Maybe give some advice on what those 4 or 5 schools should look like in terms of going through the decision process.
Sure. Well, really what the school should look like, it should look like a match between what the student has interest in and what the school has to offer. So I often tell students to think about building an imaginary college or university in their mind. What does it look like? How big, how small, how close to home, how far from home? How many majors do they have to offer? Do they have, athletic programs that students rally around? Those are all kind of things that I think you put into this mix. Now when you're doing your comparison of colleges, you try to find colleges that meet some of those attributes that you think you might really want in a college setting. So if students have done that, great. If they haven't, think about what is important to you. Obviously, going to class and sitting in a classroom and taking notes is pretty common at most institutions. What you surround yourself with in terms of the things outside of the classroom become just as important in that decision-making process. So why a campus visit? To see what some of those things are. So where is the rec center located? What do students do with their free time? Is it a commuter campus or a campus where students live on campus? What's the social climate on campus? Can I be involved in clubs, groups, and organizations? What about things associated with academics like internships and co-ops? Can I get good practical experiences with my major? Because when I graduate, I hope to have a job. So those are all kinds of things you can learn on that campus visit.
There is the possibility of rejection. So when they're looking at that 4 or 5 schools, in terms of, there's a school everybody would love to go to. But there are other choices. So let's talk through
Sure, yeah. The good news is there's a college for every student. You're going to be admitted somewhere. So in your 4 or 5 or schools of choice, you might have a reach university, a university that you would like to go to. It may be such that your grades and scores are close, but maybe not at the very top. And so maybe that school may not be able to admit you because of the competition. There are schools out there that have a 7, 8, 9% acceptance rate, meaning that 7 out of 10 students who apply don't get admitted. Not because they're not talented students, it's just they don't have that kind of space. But then there are schools that are competitive, but still students have a chance to attend. So one way I think to evaluate that would be to do a little research beforehand, take the 4 or 5 schools that you're considering, just Google it. Just say acceptance rate at this institution or this college, and it'll pop up telling you what the acceptance rate is. If it's a 9 or 10% acceptance rate, that tells you how competitive it is. If it's a 75 to 80% acceptance rate, then that tells you something different. So when you look at that, that'll kind of give you a better idea as to what your choices might be.
And it's not the end of the world. Maybe a word to the parents and the student about, it happens, but it's part of it and it's not the end.
Yeah, no, it's not the end at all. It's just the beginning. And so students go into this where maybe they don't get admitted, but they find that there are other schools that serve their needs just as well. And so students need to do, again, a little research before going into it, but I think you're going to find a school that meets your needs. What really happens oftentimes is that when students do their process of narrowing it down, they find 2 or 3 schools that meet their needs, not just one. Now the decision is picking one of those schools, even though all 3 meet the needs, how do I pick just one? And so that's where I think students run into a little bit more of a time lag, not knowing what they want to choose.
There are resources out there, and sometimes it can feel like when you're in this process of selecting a college, you're on an island and having to sort through it. Certainly guidance counselors can provide that avenue of resource, but here in Montgomery County, we have a resource. Talk about your background and how that translates into helping kids here in the county.
Yeah, sure. For 40 years, I've been here in the Dayton area, working most of those years at the University of Dayton as Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid, and working as the Chief Recruitment Officer at Wright State University. So I've had the opportunity to work with students, counselors, principals, superintendents for the last 40 years. Have a pretty good understanding of the landscape when it comes to college admissions and financial aid. I serve on a number of regional boards, national boards, where I have opportunities to interact with my colleagues at other institutions across the country. So I think I've got some resource opportunities that I can offer to students and parents who might want to ask questions about process, chances of being admitted, finances, how do we afford this, things like that. So this summer we had a program we called Jump Start for Montgomery County Rising Seniors. And it's one where we had a 45-minute conversation to talk a little bit about what those next steps might look like, how to prepare for the time in which we're sitting in right now. What can I be doing over the summer to get prepared for the fall term? So in our conversations, again, we encourage them to do the research of the schools they're considering. We encourage them to go do the campus visit at some point in time. We wanted them to go in and find out what the acceptance rate might be. One of the things that we're offering here for Montgomery County students is a college and career fair at Butler High School later on in October, where there probably will be close to 100 colleges and universities coming to the Dayton area to meet and talk with high school juniors, high school seniors about their institutions. So it gives the students an opportunity to still do the research. But here, we're offering these opportunities in-house for students who may have interest in doing a one-on-one type of interview.
This is an aside here. So what I'm going to do on that part is also then tag on, and it'll be a screen that has your email address. So
Okay.
perhaps say, bottom line is, I'm here to help. Here's how to get a hold of me. Here's my
Okay.
email address.
You may give you the email address or just say, okay.
Read it out, and that way I'll
Robert.Durkle at MCESC. Okay. Yeah, if students would like to have an opportunity to meet one-on-one, certainly I'm more than happy to do that. I met with over 30 students this summer to kind of talk through this process, but reach out to me. Robert.Durkle at MCESC.org is the email address. We can do in-person or Zoom meetings, but if you'd like to have that 45-minute session to talk a little bit about next steps, more than happy to spend time with you individually.
Take us inside for a second on, I mean, it's probably pretty typical at all colleges, but once applications come in, the time frame of selecting those students and how that kind of looks.
Sure. Yeah, the vast majority of applications at most of the colleges, especially the area colleges, probably come in the month of September, October, November. Many of the schools have a November 1 deadline date for application, and it's really important to make sure you follow those deadlines because it's such that some of those programs do fill to capacity, and if you miss that deadline date, you may not be able to get into your first choice school or maybe your first choice major. So getting that application in sometime here this fall, having the high school counselor send those transcripts to the schools in which you're considering, because not only is there an application that gets submitted to the college, transcripts showing the high school course selection and grades are going to go along as well with that application. And then if you have an ACT or SAT score, and in this area most of the colleges and universities are test optional, meaning it's an option to either submit a score or not. But if a student has an ACT or an SAT and they would like to submit that with their application, generally you have to contact the testing agency directly and have that agency send that test score to the schools that you're considering. So transcripts, test scores, the actual application are all things that should be done here in the next month and a half to 2 months.
Let's talk about the application because that can be a point of anxiety for parents in particular because the cost involved for the applications. There are avenues for that.
Yeah, every school will either have an application fee or not. There are schools that do charge, and it ranges between probably $40 and $50 for an application fee. But there's also fee waivers. So again, working with your high school counselor to see if you can obtain a fee waiver for an application fee. Because if you're going to apply to 5 or 6 schools and they all would cost $50 each, that's a pretty hefty price to pay just to apply. So check with your high school counselor to see if you meet some of the criteria to be eligible for a fee waiver. But again, going back and doing your research and looking at the schools you're considering, that's one factor to take in consideration. How much does it cost to apply? Now the good news, more and more schools are doing away with an application fee. So there are a number of schools in the area that no longer have an application fee, but there are some that still do. So work with your counselor to see if there's a fee waiver opportunity that you might be eligible for the schools that do still charge an application fee.
And let's talk about that common application.
Yeah, the common application is one that most schools use to help students get to this application process. So over 900 universities throughout the United States are members of the Common App, which means that a student can fill out one application and then check a box based on the schools they would like to have that sent to. So a lot of the area colleges here in the Dayton area are members of the Common App. So you can fill out one application, check 5, 6, 7 boxes, and that application then will go to the individual schools that you're thinking of applying to. So look at the websites. The various universities have a link to the Common App on the webpage, or you can go to commonapp.org and do a search of what schools are members of the Common App, and that'll tell you who's a member and who's not.
Finally, this could and should be a great moment for the kid and the parents, the possibilities, you know, it can get a little, could be some tension, but for the most part, this should be a fun.
Yeah, this should be really enjoyable. It's one of those things. It's like buying your first house or buying your first car, or maybe even getting married at some point in time. This is one of those events that only comes around once, and so you should enjoy it. Yeah, there will be some complications along the way. You'll feel stressed. You shouldn't, but you will. It's just nature. But I would say enjoy this with your family. This is a family moment. You kind of talk about this as a family. You look at hopes and dreams and goals and how can you achieve those, and where does the parents come into play? They should be a mentor as much as a parent, helping the student guide themselves to what's their future as it pertains to college. It may be that college is not the answer for every student, so in that conversation it might be decided that maybe the trade skills are better for me than going on to college. That's okay, that's fine, that's perfectly fine. But now's that time to have that conversation, because you only graduate from high school once, and then you have a choice to make in terms of career goal or going on to college. But if you're going on to college, again, there are some steps you have to take after high school to make sure that you're prepared to get into a school, and then not only get in, but you also want to succeed.
Name, title?
Rob Durkle, Montgomery County ESC, College Access Coordinator.
Last thing, keep looking at that.
Nope.
Okay, do that part again.
Rob Durkle, Montgomery County ESC, College Access Coordinator.
That stand, keep your eye on that stand and do it again.
Rob Durkle, Montgomery County ESC, College Access Coordinator.